GBNews.com.
There's still time to win our Summer Spectacular with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. There's another Tory candidate now investigated for betting on the date of the election. I can tell you now, Rishi Sunak needs this like a hole in the head. He's under pressure to suspend these candidates, should he or not? Also tonight, you know by now that there's this Willie Wernty, Keir Starmer. Is he going to increase council tax? He says no. Do you believe him though? But I also want to open up the debate now. Do you think council tax should be increased? Does it need reform or not? Also, parliamentary candidates now apparently are not able to attend hustings due to safety. Do we do enough to help these people or not? And last but not least, prisons. I mean, we know by now that this system is absolutely broken. Who is going to be the party to fix it? All of that and more. But first, tonight's news headlines.
Michelle, thanks very much indeed. The top story from the GB newsroom tonight, the Conservative candidate Laura Saunders, who's facing a probe over allegedly betting on the timing of the UK election, says she'll be cooperating with the Gambling Commission investigation. Laura Saunders and her husband, Tony Lee, who's the campaign director for the Conservative Party, are both under scrutiny over the allegations. A solicitor for Mrs Saunders says she's also considering legal action against the BBC and other outlets for infringements of her privacy rights. And that comes after another Tory candidate, Craig Williams, admitted to an error of judgment after placing a bet on when the election would take place. Government Minister Michael Gove says the allegations are reprehensible.
Is the case that obviously any decision by anyone to use inside information to bet on the election date, that is wrong. Deeply regrettable, but I think the individuals concerned are now being investigated, and until that process is concluded, I think it's difficult for me to say more.
Michael Gove. Well, Sir Keir Starmer has criticised the Conservatives, saying the behaviour would never be tolerated by Labour.
This candidate should be suspended, and it's very telling that Rishi Sunak has not already done that. If it was one of my candidates, they'd be gone and their feet would not have touched the floor.
Keir Starmer. Now, the Bank of England has held its interest rate at 5.25%. That is the highest level since 2008. It is a blow as well for borrowers, but it could be good news for those with savings. The bank says it needs more certainty that inflation will stay low, but minutes from the Bank of England's meeting do hint at the possibility of a cut in interest rates by the time they meet again in August. And that comes as new information's been released, which estimates that the average first-time buyer now needs to earn more than £60,000 a year to buy a property. Property website Zoopla says would-be buyers trying to get onto the property ladder need an income of nearly £15,000 a year more than they did 5 years ago. Now, as you've been hearing throughout the afternoon here on GB News, a friend of missing British teenager Jay Slater insists he would have tried to get help if he was in trouble. Lucy Law has said the 19-year-old from Lancashire rang her during their holiday in Tenerife and told her he didn't know where he was. Despite Jay's mobile phone being on 1% battery, he did manage to send a photograph of his location. His mother has since joined a team of mountain rescuers and local police on the island of Tenerife, and the search is now in its third day. Back to the election, and Michael Gove says the Conservatives are still capable of pulling off what he's calling a poll-defying election victory, despite forecasts of a Labour landslide. But new YouGov data suggests the Conservatives will slump to their lowest number of seats ever, while Labour could win a 200-seat majority. It's also predicting significant gains for the Lib Dems, winning 67 seats, 6 times their result in 2019. Now, a further 45 cases of E. coli have been reported in England, but health experts are saying the rate of new infections has slowed down. The UK Health Security Agency says the additional cases were recorded between June the 14th and 18th and bring the total number of confirmed cases to 256. Health experts say the figure is, though, still likely to rise as NHS labs continue with their testing. The Food Standards Agency traced the outbreak to salad in pre-packaged sandwiches. Several supermarkets have removed sandwiches with salad from their shelves as a result. Now, emissions created by burning fossil fuels should be considered when granting planning permission for new drilling sites. That's according to a new ruling by the Supreme Court. Sarah Finch challenged a decision by Surrey County Council to allow the expansion of an oil well site in 2019. Her appeal was challenged by the council, which argued that the law didn't require downstream effects of emissions to be considered. But today's ruling overturns the original decision to grant planning permission in that case. Now let's bring you the very latest from the Euros. We can tell you that the game is still progressing in Frankfurt. It's still 1-1 as I look at the live feed coming to me here. And thousands of football fans, of course, gathered in the German city for England's game against Denmark. If you're watching on TV, you can see the fan zone in Wembley right now. Local concerns for the potential for trouble in Frankfurt, but so far the mood calm, despite seeing Danish fans walking down the streets in Frankfurt chanting, "It's never coming home." Gareth Southgate sticking to that unchanged squad following his team's 1-0 victory over Serbia. Harry Kane scoring an early goal, but Denmark equalising shortly afterwards. So supporters in Nottingham as well gathering to cheer England on. Here they are in the moments before that. Oh no, this is live pictures that we're showing you right now of them watching the game as it starts again for the second half. I can also tell you the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been posting on social media this morning, wishing the England squad good luck for that game. We're still wishing them on. That's the news. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Polly. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, I've got the former Conservative MP Paul Scully and the former Labour MP Luciana Berger. Good evening to both of you. And thank you to each and every one of you for joining us tonight. Football, what football? It's more entertaining here, if you ask me. You know the drill, don't you? It's not just about us. It is about you guys at home as well. What on earth is on your mind tonight? You can get in touch all the usual ways. ways. You can email gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website gbnews.com/yoursay, or of course you can tweet or X me wherever you're watching or listening tonight. You are very, very welcome indeed. Now let's cut to the chase, because things are not going well over in the Tory camp. Now we've got not one, not two, but 3 people now are under investigation for placing bets on when on earth the election would be called. We've got 2 parliamentary candidates and, of course, the Close Protection Officer. This is not good. It's not good at all, I would say. It's actually quite grubby, really. One of my viewers has just got in touch, Philip, and you're saying this is the fault of the betting firms. You're suggesting that actually these companies shouldn't be allowed to take bets at all on the date of the election. Really? I'm not sure I agree with you on that. Paul, you know, I don't mean to be rude, but it does feel a little bit like from the moment this election was called and the pouring rain and all the rest of it, things just seem to be going from bad to worse to the Conservatives. I mean, am I being unkind, or do you feel like that as a Conservative?
Oh, absolutely. No, I do. You're not being unkind. Look, let me get the rider out of the way, that there is an investigation going on, so we'll see the detail, because this is sort of speculation at the moment. But clearly, there's wrongdoing. Really looks like it, and it is appalling. You're right. It feels like we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and we're not millipedes. We've only got 2 feet, and so there's only so much capacity we've got. This when you got the. Effectively, what's a punishment election? When you've got people that are wanting to punish the Conservatives, and so they're going to be looking under the microscope at absolutely everything that we do, and then we're making it easy for them to punish us even further on that basis, because there's no way you should be using inside information, not just because of the morality of it, but frankly, in the middle of an election, it just looks absolutely awful. It's just campaign rule number 1. Don't do something stupid that you wouldn't want to see on the front of the Daily Mail or another broadsheet. I've
got to say, I mean, I also regard it as incredibly thick behaviour. I mean, obviously, I don't condone cheating or, insider trading or whatever people want to call these things. I don't condone that. I'm not saying anyone should do it. But if you are going to do it, you wouldn't use your own kind of name and all the rest of it to do that, because one of these people, it immediately flagged up an alert to the company. And I just think, I mean, have you just given up? Not you, but have the party given up and just gone, do you know what, whatever, we might as well just do anything now?
So I think the frustrating thing, I used to be a councillor back in the day when during the expenses scandal and these kind of things, and I've seen stuff that's going up in Westminster when I was a local politician, and before that when I was a local volunteer just knocking on doors trying to help out, and you sit there and you wring your hands, and what happens is that people very easily, when they're in Westminster, either in party headquarters or number 10 or in Parliament, get in a bubble and you forget about why you're there to serve the public and actually do the right thing. You just get wrapped up in your own thing, thinking you're invincible. It was similar with Partygate and these other kind of things. It looks awful because it is awful.
Luciana, what do you make to it?
Well, I mean, it is. I would have thought and used the word grubby, before we had this conversation today. It makes your skin crawl, and this is a time of elections. It's about choosing the people that are going to represent you. We have something in this country called the Nolan Principles, for the standards of public life, and 2 of those are about honesty and integrity, and this calls into question people that want to put themselves to stand for Parliament either for the first time or again, people who themselves are representatives at the highest level of the Conservative Party. And it just calls into question the whole issue of trust. This is yet another trust issue. Paul mentioned the issues of partying and Partygate during COVID, giving PPE contracts to your mates to the tune of multi-millions of pounds. And this is yet another thing where it's like someone trying to make a quick buck out of the election, just try and make some money out of it, when actually this is like kind of playing with the country. And I think it's an affront to the British public.
I'd say I think the PPE thing is slightly different in so much that at the time we were in a real rush. Every country was in a right rush to get out. And I remember before they had the sort of fast lanes, the guy that sorted out the Olympics procurement actually came in to try and tidy up what was happening, and it seemed like we were selling the same production lines from China about 5 times over, because no one really knew what was going on. Rather than I wouldn't necessarily put that in the same boat, but it is trust across the political board. What it does, it puts people off politicians, not just the Conservative. At the moment, it's the Conservative Party, but it just puts people off politicians and getting involved in politics in the first place.
It's a disservice to us all. It's a disservice to the country.
Well, in the news headlines a second ago, you had just heard Keir Starmer. He was speaking out and essentially saying that those candidates should basically be suspended, and he's obviously calling out Rishi Sunak for not doing that. What do you think to that?
Well, as I say, I just don't have that the information to hand, there is an investigation going on.
All right, so let's fast forward.
You can't take them off the ballot paper. They're already on. So
let's fast forward then and assume that they are guilty of this. Should they be disowned by the Tories then?
Well, yeah, I think that's fair, because if if it's been shown that they had information and they used it for their own advantage, then that's not appropriate.
And the first thing to say is illegal. If they are found to have committed what is a crime, that's what it is. Then let's call it out for. This is not just like someone having like a little flutter on the side. If you have inside information and you use it to place a bet to win, and you do win, that is illegal, and it's very clear in our law. But what I would say is,
actually, hang on, because I thought it was even broader than that. Because I thought it wasn't if you win. Then you.
If you bet.
Yeah, if you cheat, irrespective, you might get it wrong.
Forgive me, you're right. Absolutely
you might get it wrong, and even if you get it wrong, then you're still in breach of the rules, because it's the fact that you've leveraged that information to place that bet, irrespective of the outcome.
Absolutely. I think there's one thing that's also particularly concerning. So yes, once someone is on the ballot paper, you can't remove them. Like, the deadline has passed, but you can and arguably should do if you've got a strong inclination that they have indulged in this behaviour and they have placed those bets, and they should no longer be standing as Conservative candidates. And the thing that's kind of most troubling to me is that we saw very, very rapid action taken against the Prime Minister's close protection officer, and yet this information, we understand, is something that has been made available to Downing Street for a number of days. It feels like it's just been sat on, and actually swift action should be taken, and there's nothing to prevent the party from saying, well, yes, we can't take you off the ballot paper, but we can disown you. And I think that's what we haven't seen.
They've been found guilty of stuff.
It's. Listen, of course, guilty, innocent until proven guilty, absolutely. But
we're sort of getting into speculation. That's part of the problem. I understand exactly what you're saying, and we do need robust action when we can have that. But I think we're sort of in
the difference is, I just again come back to this point. We saw very swift action taken and very swift condemnation of the close protection officer. We have not seen that same charge levelled at the people.
I'm not quite sure what the difference is in terms of the information that they know about him or her. I don't know.
It does. There has been a letter that's been sent today by the campaign lead on the Labour side, calling on Rishi Sunak to apply the same principles to the candidates, either the MP who's standing again or the candidate in Bristol who is standing for the first time.
It's another day. It's another day. We're not talking about taxation. We're not talking about the cost of living. We're not talking about the economy. We're not talking about the things that actually matter to people on a day-to-day basis.
I agree with you.
And there are candidates, Conservative candidates, obviously as well, that are up and down this country that are trying to do the right thing by their local constituencies. And I know, having been in that position myself, how frustrating that is. I'm out helping some candidates, and they, I won't mention their names because of the Ofcom rules, but and it is a frustration when they can't do their own job because they're being held to account about other people.
But I think that the leadership of the Conservative Party could have done so much more to shut this down much quicker. But rather than saying, we can't talk about it because it's under investigation, again, I make the comparison with what's done with the close protection officer and just say...
I think the leadership is part of the problem. You see that, it's not just from this issue. This is about the rest of the country.
I think the Labour Party got a bit of a cheek, actually, because whatever happened to that fella Nick Brown, who is under investigation for stuff that has been so tightly controlled, that information, no one really knows what's going on there. So I actually think that before Keir Starmer...
Is he under police investigation?
Who knows?
We didn't know, did we?
Who knows? And this is the point that I'm making. This guy was a very senior and very well-known member of the Labour Party. It's just gone, there's like a wall of silence. So if I was Keir Starmer, before I started chuntering about everyone else doing this and that and the other when it comes to investigations, I'd have a little bit of a look in the mirror and I'd ask myself what's going on with Nick Brown, and don't the public actually deserve to know information about that? What do you make to all of that? Look, after the break, I want to talk to you about a big issue. Council tax. What do you think to this? There's rumours that perhaps Keir Starmer is going to try and change this, increase it perhaps. Do you think it is time for a reform of that system then, or not? You tell me.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The new BBC Director of Sport, who's a man called Alex K. Jelski, who's downplayed fears raised by sports women about biological men competing in female categories. And he's also called Martina Navratilova, I've got to say, has to be probably the most successful woman tennis player in history, and a very brave woman too. She escaped the Iron Curtain and she came out. And Sharon Davis, he says, are not experts on the issue.
At the same time, transgender US swimmer Leah Thomas has lost her legal battle and been told that she cannot compete at the Olympics.
So Leah Thomas made an appeal to World Aquatics, who have this rule in place that says that they protect the female category, as does athletics and world cycling. And because Leah doesn't actually qualify, because Leah isn't training, so she's not even someone that would be potentially part of the Olympic team. They've just said that, you know, you don't qualify to be able to bring this case. It's been thrown out on a technicality, thank goodness, and which means that, you know, swimming will not have any males beating elite females in Paris this summer, which was particularly good for me, bearing in mind that I now have to be very careful about what I'm allowed to say and not say. We're not allowed to use the words biological male, transitioned male. I mean, just every single possible way that we could explain that the person in the race wasn't a female, and it only affects women. It doesn't affect men. You know, females that identify as males are no risk to men's sport in any shape or form. It's just women that are losing their opportunities. The thing I take the most offence to, and this is very serious, and this needs to be dealt with by the BBC, and this is why I wrote to Tim Davie. In that article, he compared males that are identifying as women in women's sport to Jamaican and Ethiopian females being allowed to compete.
What?
The People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight, alongside with the former Conservative MP Paul Scully and the former Labour MP Luciana Berger. Good evening. Welcome back, everybody. There's a lot of people getting in touch, and I think it's a real shame, you know, just pointing out that you're saying that you think that standards within politics has just declined. And it really makes me sad, because we talk all the time about how do we encourage people to turn out and vote, and surely you've got to start with having a system that people value and believe in and can put their faith in. And if we don't have that, it's not a lot, really, is it? David says, here we go again. Trial by media. These people are investigated. They are not found guilty yet. Essentially, leave them alone. Paul says, why are you surprised that somebody involved in politics would act in a way that is potentially grubby? Cool, blimey, Paul, you're a harsh man. Look, there's been a lot of rumour about council tax and what's going to happen to this. Let's just look at what Keir Starmer has been talking about.
There will not be an increase in council tax.
Look, Nick, what I'm not going to do is sit here 2 and a bit weeks before the election and write the budgets for the next 5 years. What I
so you
can
can't rule
say,
it out?
What I can say is that none of our plans require a tax rise.
Your decline is just to take the opportunity to say that council tax will not increase. So I can put it to you that it will increase. And you can say I don't know.
Nick, look, it would be foolish to write 5 years worth of budgets before going through to 2029.
But you do realise, respectfully, every time you say we're not going to raise VAT, we're not going to raise it, and everybody says what about council tax? You say, well, I honestly can't. You know what people are thinking. You're a bright bloke. Council tax will go up.
Yeah, well, let me...
Clearly. Clearly it will.
No, Nick, that isn't our plan. No, Nick, none of our plans require a tax rise.
Will it go up or when to go up?
I mean, you can make your own mind up on that, but let me ask you, why, if Labour Party have no plans to raise council tax, why wouldn't Keir Starmer just turn around and say, look, we've set out the plans as they currently stand, we have no current plans at all to raise council tax or to alter council tax, full stop. Why not rule it out?
Well, I think he did. I mean,
really?
Yeah. I mean, and it's not just what he said. I've also listened very closely to what other members of the shadow cabinet have said, including Rachel Reeves, who's the shadow chancellor, who, if Labour's successful in 2 weeks' time, will be the chancellor and will be in charge of money. And she was pretty robust when asked about it yesterday. She was pretty clear.
Well, you
the
just
answer's
said
no.
then 5 times. He didn't turn around and go, no, we're not going to do it.
Well, we didn't hear what the first question was, the specific question that he was asked, that he was responding to. And obviously, again, in preparation for our conversation today, I was listening and looking very closely at not just what Keir Starmer has said, but also those people that are going to be in charge around him in a potential Labour cabinet. And they've been very, very clear. And they've said, look at the costings, look at what's in our manifesto, not just the pages. And I would urge any of your viewers to have a look and to read the Labour manifesto. But look, go to the grey section as well. The grey section at the end is the costings. It's very, very clear where the money's going to come from, where it's going to be generated from.
At that now, when you're saying to people, go read the manifesto.
No, I'm just saying. But they've talked. Labour has rightly talked about the lot.
The manifestos. This is the problem.
No.
Don't stick to what's written in the manifestos.
You can't judge one party on the actions of another party. They are not the same. They're not the same. And Keir has, I think, been very, very clear in all of the debates and discussions that he's had about, and particularly in the context of the conversation we've just had, is that we need to return some form of decency in our politics, and that when we make when politicians or when parties make pledges and commitments, that those are honoured. Why are we in the situation that we're in now? And I see it on the doorsteps. I've also been campaigning across the country, knocked on many doors and heard the levels of dissatisfaction and the levels of distrust in the public. The party is very, very concerned, as it rightly should be, that at this election the promises it makes should be fully funded, fully costed, and that it's making pledges that it knows that it can keep.
Yeah, you've not convinced me. I absolutely categorically don't believe that they will stick to everything in this manifesto and that what's in the manifesto is a sum total. You at home might have a different view. Maybe you do categorically believe that it's a sum total of what is in that grey paper. Let me just bring you in, Paul. What do you make to this?
I think he's got to be much clearer about it, because the thing is with it is he's obviously going to keep himself some wiggle room about taxes. He ruled out some specific tax increases, but with council tax changes, it's not just a budget and you change it around. This is something that was settled in 1991. Everything is just based on the valuations that were done by people driving past with a clipboard in 1991, assuming what was in those houses. And so if you're going to reevaluate council tax, it's a massive job. So it's something that you should be able to actually say, you know what, this is big, this is going to affect people, we need to think about it long and hard before we even go there. So let's just rule it out for the next 5 years. Be really clear.
Is that not a fairer position to have?
Well, I mean, there's a few things there. Firstly, I would say that, and it's a really important practical point for anyone watching, that there is an opportunity for people to contest their banding. I've certainly done it twice and been successful. So people should be made aware that that opportunity exists. And there are some challenges about how areas have evolved and developed over time. But again, I think it speaks to this question of being direct and being clear. And again, I've listened very closely to what's been said, and in particular was listening to the interviews yesterday with Rachel Reeves, and who's going to be in charge of the money, and she was very, very, very clear when she was asked about council tax that this is not something that they're going to pursue.
I think part of the problem with Keir is, as PM, is that you often get this wriggle room that he allows himself to be, because he's been so cautious. We always talk about him holding the Ming vase, not wanting to drop it because he's just going to win by default in 2 weeks' time, and so he doesn't want to do anything silly. So it's just, actually, you can be bold when you just, ruling something like that. That's not going to drop the Ming vase by saying, you know what, I'm not going to reevaluate council tax.
Let's look at another thing Keir Starmer was saying, I think it was in the same interview actually, about working people. We keep hearing this phrase all the time. Have a listen to this.
We have the growth. Well, a working person...
Simon Cowell?
Well, a working person is someone who works their living...
I've got that.
And uses our public services. The person I have in mind, the person I have in my mind, Nick, when I say working people, is people who earn a living, rely on our services, and don't really have the ability to write a cheque when they get into trouble.
Obviously, Keir Starmer's come under a lot of criticism for that, because people have interpreted what he said there, Luciano, as basically saying, if you've got some savings, then we can't rule out tax rises for you, because he's just mentioned, there'll be no tax rises for the working person. But if a working person is not someone that's got a little bit of money for a rainy day in the bank, then they're not off limits then when it comes to tax rises.
I didn't interpret it in that way at all. I think there's first of all, there's the overwhelming majority of people in this country are living from paycheck to paycheck. That is the reality that they face, particularly in the cost of living crisis and massive increases in housing costs, be that from a mortgage. You know, we've seen interest rates stuck today, or people that are paying ever out of reach rents. So the reality for most people is that that is not their circumstances. And I think he was talking about people that kind of find themselves like suddenly where you've got to like find like thousands of pounds for it's only my interpretation, you know, when you've got to have like an urgent like housing repair or something, you know, most people in this country just don't have those reserves, but they've had to dip into those reserves or those savings because of the very dire economic circumstances they find themselves in, because they're having to spend thousands of pounds on their energy bills, or just that £5,000 more we're all spending since the last election on our food bills that we didn't have to pay before. That is the reality for people in this country, and that's the people he's talking about.
But am I wrong in thinking that you can even be eligible for some benefits in this country if you've got up to £16,000 savings in the bank? Have I made that figure up? I don't think I have.
That sounds about right.
Someone can fact check me on that if you want, but I am sure that I was reading the other day that you can have up to £16,000 in your bank and still be eligible for support from the welfare state. I mean, what do you think to that? And of course, if I'm wrong, get in touch and tell me. I'm sure you hesitate. But how did you interpret that working people thing?
I think again he's getting stuck on basic definitions. You know, what is a woman? What's a working person? All these kind of things that are relatively basic stuff. If you're setting out a vision for the country, you need to know what you're talking about in terms of who you're aiming your policy levers at. We had, talking about giving tax breaks to working people, we've cut a lot of working people's national insurance by up to 900 quid tax break for these people, and yet, you know, Keir's moaning about that because it doesn't.
It
doesn't affect pensions. So actually, you can't have it both ways.
Hold on, because you've taken, you've cut someone's national insurance on the one hand, whilst on the other hand freezing their tax threshold levels, so you've been pulled into fiscal drag, as people will know it's called.
And the higher earners, exactly, earners people are being dragged into the higher tax bracket that shouldn't be, and I totally agree with you.
That's nonsensical, and that's one of the issues that people have with the Conservatives. You're supposed to be the party of the aspirational people, or the strivers that want to work hard. You're supposed to be the party that lets you keep loads of your money, and then when you're banging drums going, oh, we've taken off whatever it is, 2p or whatever it was, can't remember now, of national insurance, but simultaneously yanked you up into a different tax bracket, it is laughable.
I think for those people, still £900 is not to be sniffed at in terms of a cut for their national insurance. I would like to see tax thresholds be increased. It's something that I was lobbying the Chancellor about for the last couple of budgets. It has become very expensive to undo because it's lasted so long throughout COVID, having shoved £408 billion out of the door when we wanted the money back. Having supported jobs, livelihoods, businesses, etc. We have had that. We do have that challenge, but I would like to see that reversed and unravelled.
I think there's two things to say. The first thing is that we've got the highest levels of taxation in this country in 70 years.
And it's going to go up again.
And that's why Labour's very clearly set out this lock around, this triple lock to making sure that there isn't any rises in either national insurance or income tax or VAT. I think, the public deserves to hear that at a time when they've seen these tax levels increase and they haven't seen a return for it. If we'd have had the same levels of growth in this country since 2010, we'd be £150 billion better off as a country. And I think that's particularly challenging why you've then got a government that's like spending the money and bringing it in but not actually generating it.
Well, that's happened across Europe as well, and indeed across the world. I think it's really only America out of the big economies that's actually growing.
Well, you at home, you will have a view as to whether or not you actually feel better off, irrespective of what levers have been pulled or not. Do you feel better off or not? Get in touch with me. Let me know your thoughts after the break. I want to ask you why our MPs are getting to the point now where they don't even attend hustings because of safety concerns. Are the parties doing enough to protect them?
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office on GB News. Most places will have a fine start tomorrow. Plenty of sunshine, but a change on the way in the west as things start to cloud over with outbreaks of rain, courtesy of a couple of weather systems and a couple of areas of low pressure, pushing away the high pressure that's brought most of us a fine day today. Still very pleasant out there this evening. The main exception to that being Western Scotland, as the rain is trickling in here. Some of that rain could turn a bit heavy as we go through the night. But for most, it's a dry night. Clear skies will allow a little bit of mist and fog to form and turn quite chilly over parts of eastern England, down to single figures for parts of East Anglia and the southeast, certainly in the countryside. So a coolish start here, but any mist and fog will soon disappear. And then generally, it's going to be another fine day across the Midlands, East Anglia and the South East. Plenty of sunshine, soon starting to lift the temperatures. But a cloudier day for Wales and South West England. Quite a cloudy start for Northern Ireland with some outbreaks of rain here and a bit of a damp start in Western Scotland as well. Much of Northern England, much of Eastern Scotland dry and fine, but a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain and drizzle over the Northern Isles too. It's further west though where we've got this weather front moving in, bringing more in the way of persistent rain. That'll cloud things over across all of Northern Ireland by lunchtime and patchy rain edging in here through the afternoon. Further rain to come at times across Western Scotland. A few showers developing across Wales and southwest England too. Still some brightness possible here, but definitely the brightest, sunniest weather over central and eastern parts, and the warmest weather as well, 23, 24, whereas in the west it will feel a bit cooler than today because of the cloud and the rain. Leaving some showers around during Saturday over parts of eastern England, another weather front coming into the northwest, but between, again, many places set fair on Saturday, a brighter day for Wales, and as we go through the weekend into the early part of next week in particular, it is going to get quite a bit warmer.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. On the M61 in Lancashire, one lane's out of action northbound from the M65 towards the M6, where a lorry is overturned. Once you get onto the M6, one lane remains shut, heading north through Warwickshire up to the M42. Recovery works underway after a car broke down, and the M42 has a lane blocked northbound now from the M40 up to the Shelley and Dorridge exit junction 4, where a lorry has broken down. Long queues back onto the M40 approaching. On the M1 heading south towards Bedford, two lanes are out for emergency barrier repairs. In West London, the Hammersmith Road at Hammersmith is closed eastbound just off the gyratory for an ongoing investigation. The M20 in Kent is blocked coastbound just before 11 at Hive as you head towards Folkestone following an accident, and there are delays of half an hour, some cancellations on trains out of London Euston to Milton Keynes Central on the West Coast Main Line because of problems with the signals. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, the former Conservative MP Paul Scully and the former Labour MP Luciana Berger. Good evening and welcome back. I will just start this part by just sharing with you some very sad news that we've just heard about the actor Donald Sutherland. Of course, you'll be familiar with him. His career has spanned more than 7 decades. Well, he has very sadly died at the age of 88. Many credits to reference: the Dirty Dozen in 1967. The war comedy MASH in 1970, and of course you'll probably know more recently from the Hunger Games films as well. Very sad news, Paul, isn't it?
No, it is. It is. He's a guy that always had a really striking voice and a very deep, striking voice, and started playing baddies as he got older. The last scene in The Invasion of Body Snatchers was something that I do remember very, very clearly. Very shocking.
Well, obviously, his son, Keith Sutherland, he has issued a statement on social media as well, announcing the passing of his father. He says within this statement, he loved what he did and he did what he loved. No one can ever ask for more. Never a true word spoken there. Anyway, look, thoughts with all of his family. Let's move on. I want to talk to you about the hustings and whether or not MPs are being kept as safe as they should be, or candidates being kept as safe as they should be during these periods, because we've had one Conservative candidate, he had to leave a hustings a couple of days ago because in the audience apparently were 2 people that were on bail for harassing him. You've also had the situation in the Labour Party where you've had Rosie Duffield. She said that she isn't comfortable attending hustings. You had a Labour I think he was a Lord, a Labour peer. He basically called her frit or lazy, I think it was, and he got into a lot of trouble for that. I'm talking about Lord Cashman. Yeah. Do you think the parties are doing enough to take care of their candidates?
Well, I think it's a job largely for the police and the parliamentary authorities. There's something called PLATE, which operates from within Parliament, and whether people are candidates or whether they're standing for re-election, I do think we need to be doing more just generally across the board to protect everyone that's putting themselves forward, and not just themselves but their families too. We heard in court yesterday the story of the experience of the family of Keir Starmer and how they had experienced protests that had taken place outside his house and how that had impacted on his children as well. So I think for many different reasons we should be doing more. You know, it wasn't 3 years ago that we lost Sir David Amess, an MP, and we've just commemorated the 8th anniversary of the death of Jo Cox. You know, we have lost 2 MPs in this country. This isn't just like something, candidates not wanting to put themselves forward. There have been the most awful repercussions and people paying with their lives. So I do think we need to take it seriously. It's horrific that it comes to this, but that's the reality that unfortunately we face. And I think the responsibility lies first and foremost with the police.
Yeah, I've got to say as well, nobody should be going to any politician's homes. You just mentioned Keir Starmer's one. Everyone will remember as well when people went into, I think it was Greenpeace, was it? They went into Rishi Sunak's garden. Do you remember that? Was it Greenpeace? I'm pretty sure I'm right there. They unfolded that big banner. I can't remember what they were protesting about. It was appalling. What do you think to it all, Paul?
No, I agree with Luciana. I think it's very difficult for the parties to do much more than they're doing. I do think they've got to be really careful as they're selecting candidates to remind candidates you've got to be really robust in this. And it's not just the trust that we were talking about earlier on the show. It is about the febrile nature of politics at the moment with social media. The police do a very good job in terms of what they do for sitting MPs. I haven't obviously been in that position, what they've done with candidates. And it's so people that are hosting hustings, whether it's churches or other organisations, they can't do it quite the same way they did before. They've got to reflect the changes as well themselves and look for the police for a bit of advice.
I do find this Rosie Duffield situation slightly different to some of the other things that we've explained, because I feel personally that she has been massively let down by the likes of Keir Starmer. She has a very particular view, which in my opinion, is a very normal opinion. She believes in biological sex and she's very vocal about that. She believes in protecting single-sex spaces for women. I think those are very admirable things to be wanting. But actually, I feel that she's not being supported in those opinions by her leader, Keir Starmer.
Well, I mean, I challenge that only because looking at the action that has been taken during this past week alone. So you mentioned the comments that were made by Lord Cashman. They were totally out of order, and it's absolutely right that the party under Keir's leadership took action. And
but this has gone on for ages.
Well, no, but you talked about specifically what happened, and I'm actually, I think it's important for your viewers to know what happened in response to that. You know, he took to Twitter, made some beyond inappropriate comments, but particularly when we're talking in the context of MP safety, and the Labour Party took action. You know, he has been suspended. He has had
that's probably because there's a general election campaign and they're trying to score brownie points.
No. I don't accept that at all. I don't accept that at all. And particularly when this came, for the Labour Party, this is an issue for all of the country. But we're having this conversation in the week where we have commemorated the 8th anniversary of the death of Jo Cox. This is something that kind of really, really speaks to the core of people who have campaigned within the Labour Party. I'm a member of the Labour Party. I remember exactly where I was as an MP, as a Labour MP at the time when we heard that story evolving. It will never leave me. It will never leave me. So I don't accept that it's just because it's an election that the party took action. The party was right to take action. It was swift action, and it was done immediately, and rightly so, and particularly even more so because the timing in which it presented itself, not the election, but because on Sunday we remembered Jo Cox, who died and who was murdered 8 years ago.
That was in the middle of the referendum campaign as well. But you're absolutely right in terms of the fact it doesn't matter what the party is, what the gender. It's actually, although female MPs do get it way worse, much more worse abuse than male MPs do. But it's just those two deaths, those two senseless deaths of friends of ours, could have been any one of us in Parliament. It's not that it was those two, as wonderful human beings as they were. It could have been us doing our job.
Absolutely, and maybe again, I say you rightly, unfortunately, because I've heard it from so many former male colleagues that it is women that disproportionately are affected. I saw 6 people convicted during my time as a member of Parliament for the harassment and intimidation and death threats that they had directed towards me, 4 of whom served a prison sentence. And I count myself very lucky that nothing more more serious happen, because just for the people that were who were identified and we were able to hold them to account, there was countless others who were anonymous and were not held to account. This is the environment in which we
I've seen
exist.
Margaret Hodges' book file that she keeps of all her abuse. When I was passing the online safety bill, obviously this was really at the heart of what we were trying to do for adults. So obviously it became largely a child protection bill, but obviously while we were protecting free speech, we wanted to make sure we could tackle some of those.
You could get rid of so much online abuse in an instant if you stopped social media companies allowing anonymous accounts.
Yeah,
I really believe that. I really believe that.
Funny enough, I had some of the big online companies' chief execs saying to me, actually, the evidence was sort of mixed on that. So it's often the abuse is coming from people who are named, ironically. Sometimes it's the keyboard warrior thing. They're not hiding necessarily behind an anonymous title. They're just sitting there thinking. It's almost like road rage. You're sitting there thinking, not realising there's another person at the end of this.
Everybody needs to be better, because at the end of the day, we do live in a democracy and we are allowed to have different political opinions. We're allowed to support different political parties. That is part of being in a free society, and personally, I want it to remain in that way. We've certainly got different opinions in terms of our views about how Keir Starmer's treated Rosie Duffield. I stand by my view that I think it's been appalling, and I think they've let that lady down. You guys at home will have very strong opinions on that. Get in touch and let me know your thoughts after the break. Prisons, it's a mess right now. Releasing people when I would argue we absolutely shouldn't be, because we've got no capacity. How do we fix this then? Which is the party to get it all sorted once and for all? You tell me.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Theatres and drama schools are being offered plus-size inclusivity training. Come on, seriously, is this really a thing? In order to tackle fat phobia, to apparently make the theatre more inclusive for bigger bodies, a lady called Ruth Ann Phillips, who is a plus-size theatre director, she's behind the drive. Now, apparently, her own research, so it's not exactly independent, showed that 9 out of 10 respondents should have training on size inclusion. Ruth is also the co-founder of Inclusion Collective, which is an organisation that provides training in creative well-being, body positivity and inclusive movement. Her website contains resources on fat activism, advocacy for the rights and dignity of fat people, combating discrimination and the body-conscious scale. This is actually about health. Ruth is conflating the two. Professor Carol Sikora, a consultant oncologist, said normalising obesity has become fashionable in advertising and the media, simply to sell stuff. But it's got nothing to do with celebrating diversity. Nobody needs to be fat. It's like encouraging risky behaviours such as smoking, driving after a booze-up, or lying like a lobster on the beach in the sun. A balanced diet and lots of exercise are the cornerstones of a healthy lifestyle. He went on to say, how can anybody possibly justify these projects? Plus-size inclusivity training, please bring back common sense. Well, exactly. I'm for equal opportunity and for giving people credit based on merit and what they bring to the table, even if it is food. Only joking. That's where the way to my heart is through my gut. I'm looking for a man that can cook. But in truth, being obese can be dangerous. And whilst I absolutely agree you should love what God gave you, obesity is the biggest killer and costs the health service a fortune. People come in all shapes and sizes, and it's a wonderful thing. But to conflate body positivity with obesity is very dangerous.
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK. From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister. Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there. Every weekday from midday. We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News. Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day. This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Hello everyone, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7. The former Conservative MP Paul Scully and the former Labour MP Luciana Berger remain alongside me. Let's talk prisons, shall we? Because apparently in the UK they are 98% full and they're going to be in a so-called crisis mode by July. We've had lots of conversations, haven't we, about people potentially being released early and so on and so forth. You're supposed to be the party of law and order. You've completely made a hash of all this.
Well, I think it's something that we've not tackled over a period of time, because actually if you're going to build prisons, you can't just do that overnight, and so we have to come up with another solution for the next 5 years, because actually, you know, we can start the process of building prisons, but crikey, we can't even build enough homes because people don't want people next to them, never mind prisoners next to them. So, you know, think what NIMBYism is going to kick off in terms of planning around prisons. But this is what I'm saying. So this is what I'm saying, because what it's actually doing is it's meaning that people are having to reopen old custody suites to have prisoners in police stations rather than actually in prisons. So it is affecting overall services, police services, as well as the justice service. Now, what we need to do, I think, is twofold. What happened over the last 10 years is we had a bit of a debate within the party. The fact that is when Rory Stewart was actually talking about, when he was prisons minister, how you actually allow people to rehabilitate themselves and shorter sentences for the lower offences, then people kicked back against that, and it means that just got kicked into the long grass. It never got solved, and now we're pushing against capacity. And now it's becoming a reactive thing rather than a responsive thing.
I mean, this isn't a new story. This is, I mean, I've followed prisons, particularly around prison health, for a number of years, and we've had this. We've known that this has been an issue. It's why the government identified that we needed 20,000 more places in our prisons. We've had previous Conservative manifestos say that we're going to have these extra prison places. The money's been allocated for these extra prison places, and yet we see all this chaos because none of these places have been built. It's a massive, massive issue, and it might be that, you know, people don't like prisons on their doorsteps and issues, you know, around planning. I think it's right that the Labour Party have said that they're going to determine prisons as of national importance, so the control would be in the hands of ministers, not in the hands of local planning authorities. I think that would make a massive difference to start doing something from day one. The other biggest issue is around reoffending. We know that 80% of offending happens when people are reoffending. Nothing has been done to address this very, very serious issue. People that keep committing crimes and you know, essentially on this revolving door. Again, I feel like we've been talking about this since we're, you know, like we're blue in the face for, you know, since when I first came into Parliament in 2010, when we saw a reduction of 20,000 police officers in this country. You know, our whole criminal justice system is in complete disarray.
But in terms of reoffending, if you keep people for comparatively smaller crimes, and I'm not being, you know, we shouldn't be soft. I mean, shoplifting is a really good example of someone that actually, because they don't investigate and worry about shoplifters that are shoplifting less than 200 quid. Well, that's an economic choice. I'll just go and shoplift 150 quid then. That's not right. We shouldn't allow that to happen. But nonetheless, if we're putting people in prison for longer periods of time, then they're actually starting to learn their crimes. They're getting better at it. So the reoffending rates that you're talking about, you're absolutely right, won't come down if you're just shoving people in prison.
Can I just cut to the chase? Do you concede then that the Tories have failed on, again, one of their core tenets, which is supposed to be, you know, tough on law and order and everything? Do you concede that they've failed on that, or that you've failed on that?
What I'm saying is that we haven't built the places in time. Over a period of time. And now, bearing in mind...
So you do concede you failed?
What I'm saying, you've got to start somewhere. It's the same with when we're trying to build...
I know, but you didn't.
When we're trying to build nuclear power stations, for example. We're trying to do this under the coalition government. We were being pulled from pillar to post.
The coalition government
14 years on.
I know, but that's how long it takes to build new prisons. You can do things on prison places.
Look, I'm asking
you can do things on prison places and actually start to...
But the Labour Party has identified...
14 million quid.
The Labour Party has identified a very quick way in which we can make a difference and get those prisons built very quickly. It's about determining prisons as buildings of national importance.
You'll still have to build. You'll still take a few years to build. That's what I'm saying. So what are we going to do now? What are we going to do in the here and now? to actually tackle this. This is the.
But this is like we've been talking about the crisis, and it has been a crisis. You know, I left Parliament in 2019. It was a crisis in 2019. We're like 4 years down the line, and still like we're at the point in which we understand that Cobra might be meeting to discuss it because it's such a serious issue when they're already letting people out. And do you know what it is? It's an affront to victims in this country. People who have gone through that whole legal process, who have had to go to court for the crimes committed against them, and yet they're now seeing people let out early. Or we're seeing this whole stasis where people can't even be convicted because we don't have the spaces in our courts.
But I don't understand. We've just been saying about Keir Starmer not being straight about council tax and tax rises. I don't know why you're not being straight, because I'm asking you, have you failed, the Tories have failed on their law and order kind of key plank of who they're supposed to be, and then you're telling me, oh, well, if you go back to the coalition and... Do you concede that you failed on law and order?
I said there's more. I said there's more we can do, because actually when we had the Prisons Minister about 2017, something like that, when Rory Stewart was Prisons Minister, he was trying to change how you sentence people, but actually the right of the party was saying no, actually you've got to bang everybody up. And he was seen as being really soft on crime. And actually what he was doing was trying to tackle reoffending rates in the same way that Luciana was suggesting. And so because we couldn't have that existential argument and get what we wanted to do right, we haven't ended up doing it. Then you get COVID, then you get other pressures, external pressures on that. But we've not been able to achieve that. Does it mean that we're not the party of law and order? No, absolutely not. We are still the party of law and order, because if you look at what we've done...
People will be laughing at you listening to that.
If we've done over a long period, but if you look over a long period of time, we have all these pressures on at the moment, but we still want to do what we do as a fundamental Conservative party, put more policemen on the street, making sure that we can have more robust... But we now have, in parts of London, in my part of London, where I was an MP, we've got a record amount of police there at the moment. And so we've started to recruit more policemen. But... it's the other end of it that we're struggling with.
Your party has let people down because the core things that you're supposed to be as Conservatives, which is tough on law and order, you know, low on taxes, all the rest of it, you've turned all of that inside out and delivered the complete opposite. I don't have time to get on to my next question, which was, for the life of me, I can't fathom why we seem to have so many foreign criminals in our prison population, because surely if we're out of space and we're at capacity, why wouldn't we be fast-tracking deporting people back to their home countries? Look, we've run out of time because that is a whole new subject in itself. But for now, thank you very much for your company. Thank you for yours too. And thank you to each and every one of you at home that chose to watch Dewbs and Co tonight. I've no idea what the score is. Did I miss a good match? I don't know. Who cares? It's been way more fun here. Apparently, it's 1-1. How boring is that? Don't go anywhere, though, because Camila Tominey is up next, and I'll see you tomorrow. Night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office on GB News. Most places will have a fine start tomorrow. Plenty of sunshine, but a change on the way in the west as things start to cloud over with outbreaks of rain, courtesy of a couple of weather systems and a couple of areas of low pressure, pushing away the high pressure that's brought most of us a fine day today. Still very pleasant out there this evening. The main exception to that being Western Scotland, as the rain is trickling in here. Some of that rain could turn a bit heavy as we go through the night, but for most it's a dry night. Clear skies will allow a little bit of mist and fog to form and turn quite chilly over parts of eastern England, down to single figures for parts of East Anglia and the southeast, certainly in the countryside. So a coolish start here, but any mist and fog will soon disappear, and then generally it's going to be another fine day across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. Plenty of sunshine, soon starting to lift the temperatures, but a cloudier day for Wales and southwest England. Quite a cloudy start for Northern Ireland with some outbreaks of rain here, and it's a bit of a damp start in western Scotland as well. Much of northern England, much of eastern Scotland dry and fine, but a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain and drizzle over the Northern Isles too. It's further west though, where we've got this weather front moving in, bringing more in the way of persistent rain. That'll cloud things over across all of Northern Ireland by lunchtime, and patchy rain edging in here through the afternoon. Further rain to come at times across western Scotland. A few showers developing across Wales and southwest England too. Still some brightness possible here, but definitely the brightest, sunniest weather over central and eastern parts, and the warmest weather as well, 23, 24, whereas in the west it will feel a bit cooler than today because of the cloud and the rain. Leaving some showers around around during Saturday over parts of eastern England. Another weather front coming into the northwest. But between, again, many places set fair on Saturday, a brighter day for Wales. And as we go through the weekend into the early part of next week in particular, it is going to get quite a bit warmer.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. It's still really slow heading north up the M61 through Lancashire, midway between the M65 and the M6 interchange. A lorry has overturned, blocking off the two left lanes, and it's still really heavy heading north up the M42 through Warwickshire, heading north of the M40 after a car broke down with queues on the M40 approaching. The M1 has a lane blocked southbound through Northamptonshire, 16 to 15A near Northampton after a car broke down, and further down on the M1, really slow heading south to 13 towards Bedford for emergency barrier repairs. Two lanes are closed. Essex south of Chelmsford, the A12 is shut northbound between Gallywood and Howe Green after a car and a motorbike collided just off the A130. West London, the Hammersmith Road at Hammersmith closed off the gyratory for an ongoing investigation. And on London Underground, severe delays continue on Circle Line, District Line and Hammersmith and City Line services after an earlier incident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction. So you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m, followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain, followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening and welcome to Vote 2024, The People's Decide with me, Camila Tominey. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to be discussing England's, well, I would say a draw's a draw, but fairly disappointing performance against Denmark with Big Sam Allardyce. We're also going to be speaking about the Tory election betting scandal. Could things get any worse for Rishi Sunak? And I'll be taking on a Just Stop Oil protester after that attack on planes at Stansted. We'll also be joined by Government Minister Kevin Hollingrake and Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth as polls predict a Tory wipeout at the general election in just 2 weeks' time. Do get in touch with your thoughts on tonight's topics by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Camilla, thanks very much indeed. We begin this bulletin with some breaking news concerning the actor Donald Sutherland, whose career spanned more than 7 decades. He has died at the age of 88. His many credits included The Dirty Dozen in 1967, the war comedy MASH in 1970, and Ordinary People in 1980, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture. More recently, he starred in the Hunger Games series of films. He was the father of Kiefer Sutherland and is often cited as one of the finest actors never to have won an Oscar. He did, however, win 2 Golden Globes and an Emmy. Donald Sutherland, who's died today. Now, in other news, the Bank of England held its interest rate today at 5.25%. It is the highest level since 2008 and it's a blow for borrowers. But it could be good news for those with savings. The bank says it needs more certainty that inflation will stay low. But minutes from the Bank of England's meeting hint at the possibility of a rate cut in August when they next meet. The Conservative candidate Laura Saunders, who's facing a probe over allegedly betting on the timing of the election, says she will be cooperating with the Gambling Commission. Laura Saunders and her husband Tony Lee, who's the campaign director for the Conservative Party, are both under scrutiny over allegations. A solicitor for Mrs Saunders says she's also considering legal action against the BBC and other outlets for infringements of her privacy rights. It comes after another Tory candidate, Craig Williams, admitted to an error of judgment after he placed a bet on when the UK election would take place. Michael Gove has said today the Tories are still capable of pulling off what he's called a poll-defying election victory, despite forecasts of a Labour landslide. Well, new YouGov data suggests the Conservatives will slump to their lowest number of seats ever, while Labour could win a 200-seat advantage. It's also predicting significant gains for the Liberal Democrats, winning 67 seats. That's 6 times their result of 2019. Now for the latest from the Euros in Frankfurt, where England have drawn 1-1 with Denmark in the German city. We've been showing you the fan zone in Wembley and in Nottingham today on GB News, where fans were pretty excited to get together and cheer on the England side. Gareth Southgate chose to stick with an unchanged squad following his team's 1-0 victory against Serbia. Well, I can tell you that Harry Kane scored a great early goal, but Denmark equalised shortly afterwards. England's next match against Slovenia on Tuesday next week, 1-1 in Frankfurt. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alert, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back. Thanks, Polly. Right, let's have a discussion about this Euros match, England versus Denmark. 1-1 draw, could have done better. That's the school report, I think, this evening. Joining me live now from a very lively fan zone is East Midlands reporter Will Hollis. Will, my goodness me, they don't make it easy, do they? What's going on? What is the fans' reaction?
Yes, well, all the excitement, all of the tension, and it all goes wrong. It was an 18th minute tap-in from captain Harry Kane that took England ahead, but it didn't last forever as Denmark equalised pretty soon after. It has been a tense match here before the 500 or so people in Nottingham that have come down to Binks Yard in front of the biggest outdoor screen in the East Midlands. Lots of people waving their flags, cheering on England, but towards the second half and afterwards, it was nail-biting, and this wasn't really the result that they wanted. It means that they do now have to fight against Slovenia to make sure that they do get to go to the final 16 into the next round instead of a clear win here that would have put them through with no objections, even with a loss in the next game. The football here is ending, but the party is only just beginning.
Absolutely. Well, I can see people... hello, lads. Yes, thank you very much. I can see people throwing pints of beer in the air in celebration at that Harry Kane goal, Will. Did you get coated in lager? I'd assume, by the way, that people may have snuck out of work a little early today and may be phoning in on Friday suggesting that they may need a duvet day.
Yes, well, the football started at 5 o'clock. This opened at 3 o'clock, and some people, of course, would have got out of work a little bit earlier. I was speaking to one chap who says that he takes the days off for these football games. Now, regarding the beer, here in Nottingham, we're a little bit more civilised. I didn't see any pints going up in the air here, but new research from Aldi says that every time England score, Gareth Southgate's side sends 5 million pints into the air. So every time that there's a goal, 5 million pints go in the air. I was speaking to the chap who runs the events for this place, Binks Yard, and he says it's good for business because it means that they have to buy another beer, but it also means that they have to buy a load more mops as well.
Well, to be fair, it doesn't look as if Nottingham fans have had a problem with that result. They seem very animated and very energised by Gareth Southgate's rather strange formulation of players on the pitch today, but they seem happy, Will. Now, you go and have a lager, yeah, put your feet up, and we'll no doubt be re-energising you for the next match against Slovenia. He's gone. Well, let's speak to Big